Do-hyun Kim stared at the strange, transparent material on his research table. As a senior xenoanthropologist on the Galactic Research Station, he had studied many human items. But this one was different. The humans called it bubble wrap, and it covered a package that had arrived from Earth that morning. He poked one of the small air-filled bubbles with his finger. Nothing happened. His research partner, Jin-Ah Park, watched from across the room, taking notes on her datapad. "Try pressing harder," Jin-Ah suggested, moving closer to observe. Do-hyun pressed the bubble firmly. A loud pop filled the quiet lab. Both scientists jumped back, their natural defense membranes activating instantly. The thin, protective layer of scales that covered their skin had turned from its usual soft blue to a dark purple, a clear sign of distress. "That was unexpected," Do-hyun said, trying to calm his racing heart. Their species, the Ardani, were usually very composed. It took a lot to trigger their defense membranes. Jin-Ah approached the table cautiously. "Let me try." She reached out and popped another bubble. The same reaction happened. Her scales darkened, and her heart rate increased. "This is fascinating," Do-hyun said, checking the readings on their medical monitors. "The sound frequency seems to trigger something deep in our neural pathways. But why?" They spent the next hour testing different bubbles. Each pop caused the same reaction. Even more interesting, the effect didn't decrease with repeated exposure. Their bodies responded to every pop as if it were a new threat. "We should tell Commander Myray about this," Jin-Ah suggested, but Do-hyun shook his head. "Not yet. We need more data first. Humans use this material everywhere. It's in almost every package they send. If it affects all Ardani like this, we need to understand why before causing panic." Just then, the lab door opened. Sung-Min Lee, the station's chief medical officer, walked in carrying his own package. It too was wrapped in bubble wrap. "Do-hyun, Jin-Ah, I need your help with." Sung-Min stopped mid-sentence, noticing their darkened scales. "What happened? Are you both okay?" Do-hyun quickly explained their discovery. To demonstrate, he popped another bubble. Sung-Min's scales immediately turned purple, and he dropped his package in surprise. Unfortunately, the package landed on its corner. A chain of pops followed as multiple bubbles burst at once. All three Ardani scientists pressed against the walls, their scales now almost black with distress. "Stop!" Jin-Ah shouted, reaching for the package. But her sudden movement caused more bubbles to pop. The sound echoed around the metal lab walls. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, the popping finally stopped. The three scientists slowly recovered, their scales returning to their normal blue color. "This is more serious than we thought," Do-hyun said, helping Sung-Min up from where he had crouched in the corner. "The reaction seems universal among our species. But humans..." Sung-Min paused, still catching his breath. "Humans actually enjoy popping these bubbles. I've seen them do it for fun." Jin-Ah started typing rapidly on her datapad. "We need to study this properly. Full biological scans, neural monitoring, frequency analysis, everything. Something about that sound connects to our deepest instincts." Do-hyun nodded. "Agreed. But let's keep this quiet for now. The last thing we need is for word to spread before we understand what's happening. Imagine the panic if people learned that every human package contains something that can trigger our defense responses." What none of them realized was that at that very moment, a large shipment of Earth goods was being prepared for delivery to the station, and every single box was wrapped in layers and layers of bubble wrap. 3 days after their initial discovery, Do-hyun Kim and Jin-Ah Park had transformed their lab into a controlled testing environment. Medical screens lined the walls, and various samples of bubble wrap sat in sealed containers. Chief Medical Officer Sung-Min Lee stood by with emergency medical equipment, just in case. "Test Subject 7 is ready," Jin-Ah announced, checking her datapad. A young Ardani volunteer sat in the testing chair, sensors attached to his blue scales. His name was Ta-jun, and he had no idea what he was about to experience. Beginning test series C, Do-hyun said into his recorder. Single bubble, standard size, distance of 2 meters. He held up the bubble wrap with scientific precision. Hop. Tae-jun's scales instantly darkened to purple. His heart rate jumped from 80 to 160 beats per minute. The medical monitors beeped with warning signals. Remarkable, some men muttered, watching the readings. Every subject shows the exact same response pattern. No variation at all. Jinna moved closer to Tae-jun, who was trying to control his breathing. Can you describe what you felt? It was like something was hunting me. Tae-jun said, his voice shaking. My body wanted to run and hide, but I don't understand why. It's just a sound. Do-hyun carefully documented everything. They had tested 7 volunteers now, and all showed identical reactions. Even more interesting, their own reactions hadn't decreased despite repeated exposure. Let's try something new, Jinna suggested. She picked up a recording device. We'll play back the sound and measure if the recording causes the same response. They helped Tae-jun calm down, waiting for his scales to return to their normal blue. When he was ready, Jinna played the recording. Nothing happened. Fascinating, Do-hyun said. It's not just the sound. There must be something else, perhaps the vibration frequency. Some men checked his instruments. The bubble wrap creates a unique combination of sound waves and physical vibrations. When it pops, it sends out a pattern that's nearly identical to. He stopped, staring at his screen. Identical to what? Jinna asked, moving to look at his data. To the hunting call of the great cave stalkers, Sung Min finished. The room fell silent. Everyone knew about the cave stalkers. They were extinct now, but for millions of years, they had been the main predators of the Ardani people. They had hunted using sound waves to paralyze their prey. Show me those frequency patterns again, Do-hyun said, his scientific curiosity overcoming his natural fear. He compared the bubble wrap data to ancient cave stalker recordings from their historical archives. The patterns matched almost perfectly. This is why our bodies react so strongly, Jinna realized. Our defense responses are coded into our DNA. When that bubble pops, our bodies think a cave stalker is about to attack. But humans, Tae-jun said, still sitting in the test chair, they play with this material. They give it to their children as a toy. Because they evolved on a different world, Do-hyun explained. They never faced predators that hunted with sound. To them, it's just a funny noise. Suddenly, the lab door opened. Commander Mairi-song walked in, looking concerned. Dr. Kim, I need your report. Why have you requested emergency funding for alternative packaging research? Before anyone could answer, Tae-jun accidentally shifted in his chair, bumping the table. A sheet of bubble wrap fell to the floor. The sound of 30 bubbles popping at once filled the lab. Commander Mairi's scales turned almost black. She dropped to a defensive crouch, her ancient instincts taking over completely. The 3 scientists weren't doing much better, pressed against the walls with their scales dark purple. When the chaos finally settled, Commander Mairi stood up, trying to maintain her dignity. I see, she said quietly. Full report on my desk by tomorrow. And she paused at the door. Find a way to fix this before the main cargo shipment arrives next week. The scientists looked at each other with worry. None of them had the heart to tell her that the cargo ship would be carrying over 10,000 sheets of bubble wrap. The cargo bay of the Galactic Research Station was busy that morning. Hae-Nul Choi, a young logistics officer, checked his data pad as workers unloaded crates from the Earth supply ship. His blue scales shimmered under the bright cargo bay lights as he moved between the boxes. Careful with those science containers, Hae-Nul called out to his team. He didn't know about the bubble wrap research. Commander Mairi had kept it secret to prevent panic. All Hae-Nul knew was that these boxes needed special handling. The cargo bay doors opened again. Do-hyun Kim and Jinna Park rushed in, looking worried. They had come to warn the cargo team. but they were too late. The unloading was already halfway done. "Hanul, wait," Do-hyun shouted. "Those boxes need tow." But at that moment, Hanul stepped backward to check a shipping label. His foot caught on a power cable. He reached out to catch his balance, grabbing the nearest stack of boxes. For a moment, everything seemed fine. Then the boxes began to fall. The first box hit the ground with a pop, then another, and another. Soon, hundreds of bubble wrap pockets were bursting at once, creating a thunderous wave of popping sounds that echoed through the metal cargo bay. The effect was instant. Every Ardani in the cargo bay froze as their scales turned dark purple. Some dropped to the ground, covering their heads. Others pressed against the walls, their ancient defense responses taking over completely. Emergency shutdown. Jinnah screamed over the chaos, trying to reach the control panel. But more boxes were falling now, creating even more pops. The sound was bouncing off the metal walls, making it seem like it was coming from everywhere at once. Hanul stood in the middle of it all, unable to move. His scales had turned almost black, a sign of extreme distress. The data pad slipped from his hands, landing on more bubble wrap. Through the cargo bay windows, Do-hyun could see the panic spreading to the main station. Ardenu workers in nearby sections were reacting to the sound, their scales changing color. Some were running away, while others stood frozen in fear. "Station alert! Station alert!" The computer's voice echoed through the speakers. "Unknown threat detected in Cargo Bay 7. Emergency protocols engage." Security doors began closing automatically. The station's defense systems, detecting the mass panic, had activated. This only made things worse, as more workers tried to escape before the doors sealed. Jinnah finally reached the control panel. She slammed her hand on the emergency ventilation button. Strong air currents began pulling the loose bubble wrap against the floors and walls, stopping some of the popping. But the damage was done. Half the station's Ardani crew were in various states of panic. The security system was on full alert, and thousands of packages, all wrapped in bubble wrap, still needed to be unloaded. Commander Myre's voice came over the station's communication system. She was trying to sound calm, but her voice shook slightly. "All personnel, remain in your current locations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Human crew members, please report to your designated emergency stations." Do-hyun looked at Jinnah across the chaos of the cargo bay. They both knew this was exactly what they had feared would happen. Their research wasn't just about scientific curiosity anymore. This had become a serious safety issue. Hanul, still standing in the middle of the fallen boxes, finally found his voice. "What? What just happened?" "A very big problem," Do-hyun answered, helping him step away from the bubble wrap-covered floor, one that's going to need a lot of explaining to the Galactic Council. In the distance, they could hear more pops as loose pieces of bubble wrap continued to find their way under feet and falling objects. The incident would soon become known across the galaxy as the bubble wrap crisis, but right now, they just needed to survive the next few hours. Commander Myra Song sat at her desk, reviewing security footage from the cargo bay incident. Her scales had returned to their normal blue color, but she kept adjusting her uniform collar, a sign she was still unsettled. "Play it again," she ordered. The screen showed Hanul Choi falling, the boxes dropping, and the wave of panic that followed. She paused the video when the first Ardani workers began to react. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter." J1 Park, the human technical specialist, walked in. Unlike the Ardani, he looked perfectly calm. "Commander, I have the initial incident report ready." "Sit down, Specialist Park," Myra said. "Help me understand how a packing material caused my station to go into emergency lockdown." J1 looked uncomfortable. "Commander, on Earth, bubble wrap is just normal. We give it to children to play with. Some humans even find the popping sound relaxing." "Relaxing?" Mayray's scales flickered purple at the memory. 27 crew members required medical attention. Our cargo operations are completely stopped, and you're telling me humans use this as a toy? Before J1 could answer, Do-hyun Kim and Jin-ah Park entered the office. They carried data pads filled with their research results. Commander, Do-hyun started, we can explain. The bubble wrap creates a sound frequency almost identical to the hunting call of the great cave stalkers. Our bodies react to it based on millions of years of evolution. Mayray turned to J1. Did you know about this? No, Commander. Nothing in our cultural exchange briefings mentioned it. The cave stalkers went extinct before humans made first contact with the Ardani. Jin-ah stepped forward, showing her datapad. Our research shows the reaction is universal among our species. We can't control it. Even knowing the sound is harmless doesn't stop our defense responses from activating. Mayray studied the medical data. Heart rates doubling. Blood pressure spikes. Stress hormones flooding the system. Every reading showed clear signs of severe physical distress. And how much of this material is still in our cargo bay? She asked quietly. The room fell silent. Finally, J1 answered. According to the manifest, approximately 10,000 sheets. Mayray's scales darkened slightly. And I assume we can't just throw it all out into space. No, Commander, Jin-ah said. Many of the science containers require specific packaging for safe transport. We need to find another solution. The commander stood and walked to her window, looking out at the stars. Do you know what the worst part is? In 6 hours, I have to explain this to the Galactic Council. I have to tell them that one of our closest allies has been unknowingly terrorizing our people with their packing materials. I might be able to help with that, J1 offered. As Earth's technical specialist, I can request an emergency meeting with our packaging engineers. We can start working on alternatives immediately. Mayray turned back to her desk and pressed a button on her computer. Security Chief, please come to my office. She looked at the humans and Ardani gathered before her. Until we find a solution, I'm declaring all bubble wrap a Class 1 restricted material on this station. We'll need new handling protocols, protective equipment, and warning signs. Do-hyun spoke up. Commander, there's something else you should know. The cargo ship that just left. It's heading to the Ardani homeworld with a full load of bubble-wrapped supplies. Mayray's scales turned a shade darker. She reached for her emergency communication console. They had less than 48 hours to prevent a planet-wide panic. Specialist Park, she said to J1, I hope you're very good at explaining things to the Council, because we're going to need all the help we can get. The great chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Ji-woo Kang, the human cultural attaché, stepped up to the speaking platform. Above her, hundreds of representatives from different species sat in rising circles, like stars in the night sky. The Ardani delegation's scales shimmered with varying shades of blue and purple, showing their unease. Honored council members, Ji-woo began, I come before you to address the incident that occurred on Research Station 7, involving the human packaging material called bubble wrap. A murmur went through the chamber. Several Ardani representatives shifted in their seats. The council leader, a tall being with silver skin, leaned forward. We have reviewed Commander Mayray Song's report. This material appears to be a significant threat to Ardani psychological well-being. With respect, council leader, Ji-woo said, this is a cultural misunderstanding, not a weapon. Humans have used this material for centuries. To us, it is completely harmless. The Ardani chief representative stood up, his scales dark with concern. Harmless. We have reports from our homeworld. When the cargo ship arrived, the unloading caused panic in 3 major spaceports. Emergency services were overwhelmed. Ji-woo nodded respectfully. This is why I brought help. She gestured to Do-hyun Kim and Jin-ah Park, who sat nervously in the witness area. These scientists have discovered why bubble wrap affects the Ardani people so strongly. Do-hyun stepped up to the platform. Despite his nervousness, his voice remained steady. The sound frequency matches an extinct predator from our evolutionary past. Our bodies react based on ancient survival instincts. We cannot control this response. The council leader turned to Jiwu. And how do humans respond to this sound? Many humans find it pleasant, Jiwu explained. Some even use it to relieve stress. Children play with it. This shows how differently our species evolved. Shocked whispers filled the chamber. The idea that one species' toy could be another's terror seemed to disturb many council members. An emergency message flashed on the chamber's main screen. Reports were coming in from across Ardani space. More incidents, more panic. The bubble wrap problem was spreading. Jiwu straightened her shoulders. The Earth government proposes an immediate solution. We will recall all bubble wrap from Ardani territories. Our engineers are already developing alternative packaging materials that are safe for both species. That could cost billions, someone shouted from the upper seats. A cost we willingly accept, Jiwu replied firmly. The friendship between humans and Ardani is worth more than money. The council chamber grew quiet. The council leader spoke softly. In all my years, I have never seen a simple trading good cause such diplomatic trouble. Jinnah stepped forward. But isn't this why we formed the Galactic Council? To help different species understand each other better. The council leader nodded slowly. Indeed. He turned to address the chamber. I propose we create new regulations for cross-species trade. All packaging materials must be tested for biological and psychological effects before approval. The vote was quick and unanimous. Within hours, bubble wrap was officially classified as a restricted material in Ardani space. Earth's shipping companies began immediate recalls. As they left the chamber, Jiwu turned to Do-hyun and Jinnah. Well, that was interesting. I never thought I'd have to explain bubble wrap to the Galactic Council. Do-hyun's scales had finally returned to their normal blue. At least some good came from this. New safety protocols will prevent similar problems in the future. True, Jinnah added, though I wonder what other surprises wait in the simple things we take for granted. High above them, in the council leader's private office, a small piece of bubble wrap sat on his desk. He looked at it wonderingly, thinking about how such a tiny thing could teach such a big lesson about galactic cooperation. Engineering team lead Yoon Ba stood in her laboratory on Research Station 7, surrounded by various packing materials. Strips of foam, gel packs, and plastic alternatives covered every surface. Her team had been working nonstop for 2 weeks to find a replacement for bubble wrap. Test number 47, she announced, pressing down on a new type of foam padding. The material compressed with a soft whisper. On the other side of the safety window, an Ardani volunteer monitored their own reactions. Their scales remained a calm blue. No negative response, the volunteer reported. But will it protect delicate equipment during transport? Yoon dropped a test container packed with the foam. It bounced slightly but remained intact. She made notes on her data pad, adding to the growing list of potential solutions. The laboratory door opened, and Do-hyun Kim walked in with Jinnah Park. They had been helping test each new material against their research data about the cave stalker frequencies. How's the testing going? Do-hyun asked, careful to stay away from the remaining bubble wrap samples locked in sealed containers. We're making progress, Yoon replied. The new silicone-based foam shows promise. It absorbs shock well and makes almost no sound when compressed. Jinnah picked up one of the foam samples. The texture is similar to bubble wrap, but without the air pockets that create those problematic sound frequencies. A message appeared on the main screen. It was from Earth's Packaging Research Institute. They had been working around the clock too, trying to modify their manufacturing processes for the new materials. Look at this, Yoon said, reading the message. They found a way to make the foam recyclable. It breaks down completely in standard matter recyclers. Do-hyun's scales brightened, showing excitement. That solves 2 problems at once: safe packaging and less waste. The team worked through the day, testing more samples. Each failure taught them something new. Each success brought them closer to a solution that would work for both species. Late that evening, Yumcio called everyone together. "I think we've done it," she said, holding up a sheet of light blue material. "This version combines the best features of everything we've tested." She demonstrated by wrapping a delicate scientific instrument in the new material. Then she deliberately dropped it from shoulder height. The package landed with a soft thud. No pops, no dangerous frequencies, just quiet protection. The Ardani volunteer approached without fear and picked up the package. Their scales remained perfectly calm. "It feels safe," they said, surprised by their own comfort with the material. Commander Meirisong arrived to inspect their progress. "Will it work for large-scale shipping?" she asked, examining the new material closely. "Yes, Commander," Yumcio answered. "The Earth factories can switch to making this with minimal changes to their equipment, and it costs about the same as bubble wrap. In fact," Jin-Ah added, "it might work even better than bubble wrap. Our tests show it provides more consistent protection against impacts." Commander Mirai nodded with approval. "Excellent work, everyone. Sometimes the best solutions come from our biggest challenges." As the team began cleaning up the laboratory, Do-hyun found an old piece of bubble wrap in a sealed container. He looked at it thoughtfully. "It's strange to think that such a simple thing caused so much trouble, but look what we achieved by working together to solve the problem." Yumcio smiled. "That's the beauty of engineering. We don't just fix problems. We find ways to make things better for everyone." In the main research laboratory of Research Station 7, Do-hyun Kim and Jin-Ah Park stood before a large screen displaying two sound wave patterns. One came from an ancient recording of a cave stalker. The other showed the sound of popping bubble wrap. The patterns matched almost perfectly. After 3 months of research, Do-hyun said to the gathered scientists, "We finally understand exactly why bubble wrap affects our people so strongly." The audience included scientists from both Earth and the Ardani homeworld. Among them sat Commander Meirisong and several members of the Galactic Council's Science Division. Jin-Ah stepped forward to explain. "The cave stalkers hunted our ancestors for millions of years. They used sound as a weapon, creating specific frequencies that would freeze their prey in place." She played the ancient recording. Every Ardani in the room felt their scales darken slightly, even though the recording was at low volume. The human scientists watched with great interest. "Our bodies developed an automatic defense response," Do-hyun continued. "When we hear these frequencies, our scales change color, and our muscles prepare either to run or freeze. We cannot control this response. It is written into our DNA." One of the Earth scientists raised her hand. "But how did bubble wrap end up making the exact same frequency?" "Pure chance," Jin-Ah answered. "The size of the air bubbles and the thickness of the plastic combined to create sound waves that match the cave stalker's hunting call. No one could have predicted this." Do-hyun pressed a button, and a new image appeared on the screen. It showed the inside of an Ardani brain during exposure to bubble wrap. Certain areas lit up bright red. "These are the same brain regions that activated when our ancestors faced cave stalkers," he explained. "Even after millions of years, our brains remember the danger. This memory passes from parent to child, generation after generation." Commander Mirai spoke up. "This discovery goes beyond bubble wrap. It shows us how deeply our evolutionary past affects our present." "Exactly," Jin-Ah agreed. "Humans have their own instinctive fears, passed down from their evolutionary history. But because humans and Ardani evolved on different worlds, facing different dangers, what frightens one species might mean nothing to the other." The presentation continued with more data, more brain scans, and more sound patterns. But the most interesting moments came during the questions that followed. Could there be other human items that affect us in ways we haven't discovered yet? One Ardani scientist asked. "Or Ardani items that might affect humans," added another. Do-hyun smiled. That's why we're establishing a new research division. We will study how different species react to everyday items from other worlds. This way, we can prevent similar problems in the future. As the meeting ended, Jinnah showed one final image. It was a picture of the new packing material that had replaced bubble wrap in Ardani space. "This is the real success story," she said. "When we understand our differences, we can find solutions that work for everyone." The bubble wrap incident taught us that even simple things can have deep meanings to different species. Commander Myray stood to close the meeting. This research will be published in the Galactic Scientific Journal next month. It will help other species understand the importance of studying evolutionary responses in interspecies relations. After everyone left, Do-hyun and Jinnah stayed in the lab, looking at their data one more time. "Who would have thought," Do-hyun said, "that studying packaging material would teach us so much about ourselves?" Jinnah nodded, "And about how different species can work together to solve problems, even if those problems come in very strange packages." 1 year after the bubble wrap incident, Research Station 7 hosted a special ceremony. The Galactic Council had chosen this day to announce new regulations for interspecies trade and cultural exchange. Commander Myra Song stood at the podium, her scales showing a calm, confident blue. "Today marks the official implementation of the interstellar packaging standards," she announced to the gathered crowd. "Thanks to the events that occurred in this very station, we now have safer and more considerate ways of handling trade between species." In the front row sat Do-hyun Kim and Jinnah Park. Their research paper, Evolutionary Responses to Cross-Species Trade Materials, had become the most read article in the history of the Galactic Scientific Journal. Next to them sat Yoon Seo-ba, whose engineering team had created the new standard for safe packaging materials. The council leader stepped forward to speak. "The bubble wrap incident taught us an important lesson. The simplest things from one world can have unexpected effects on another. Today, we turn that lesson into action." On the main screen, images showed the new packaging facilities on Earth and other worlds. The reformed shipping protocols were already in use across thousands of trade routes. Every package now carried clear labels showing which species might be sensitive to the materials used. "But we gained more than just new safety rules," the council leader continued. "This incident led to the creation of the Cross-Species Sensitivity Database. For the first time, we are systematically studying how different species react to everyday items from other worlds." Hae-Neul Choi, the logistics officer whose accident had started it all, sat in the audience. He no longer felt embarrassed about that day. Instead, he felt proud that his mistake had led to such important changes. Ji-woo Kang, the human cultural attaché, took the stage next. "The Earth government is pleased to announce that all bubble wrap has been successfully removed from Ardani space. The new universal packaging material is now in full production. It works better than bubble wrap ever did, and it's safe for all known species." Commander Mirai invited Do-hyun and Jinnah to join her at the podium. "These scientists showed us that understanding our differences makes us stronger. Their work has opened a new field of study in xenobiology and cultural relations." The ceremony continued with the official signing of the new regulations, but the most meaningful moment came afterward, in a small demonstration area set up near the stage. There, young students from both Earth and the Ardani homeworld worked together, packing and unpacking items using the new materials. They laughed and talked, completely comfortable with each other and their differences. "See that?" Jinnah said to Do-hyun as they watched the students. "1 year ago, we were hiding from bubble wrap in the laboratory. Now we're teaching the next generation how to build a safer galaxy." Do-hyun smiled. "And it all started because humans wanted to protect their packages with a material that happened to sound exactly like our ancient predators." Commander Myray joined them, holding a piece of the new packing material. "The galaxy is full of surprises," she said. "But as long as we work together to understand each other, we can turn those surprises into progress." In the station's museum, A small display now held a sealed piece of bubble wrap. Below it, a plaque read, "Sometimes the path to greater understanding starts with a pop." The display served as a reminder that in the vast space between stars, even the smallest things could bring different worlds closer together.